Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are in day 61 of the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, and we have now hit over 2 months of heavy fighting between these two industrialized nation states. And as has predicted on MFAN, Military and Foreign Affairs Network, as we had predicted that this would indeed be a most bloody and lengthy conflict, that is becoming more and more true. While we have not seen a lot of shifting in the front lines over the course of the last week, especially since the semi-announcement of this awaited Russian offensive, we do not believe that the Russians have fully invested in a lot of its maneuver capabilities as of yet. We do understand that some of those units that were being utilized in the north, especially, are being still rebuilt from some of the casualties and the level of fighting that those units seen in the north of Kiev, both to the northwest and northeast. Furthermore, we continue to hear about the casualties, especially the casualties that are being taken by Russian forces. And indeed, the Russians are taking casualties in this conflict. Are they taking more casualties than they initially had anticipated going into the conflict? Quite possibly, yes. I would say that answer is a resounding yes. Now, on the flip side of this coin, are the Ukrainians suffering significant casualties as well? And some of the information coming out of Ukrainian, the Ministry of Defense, would indicate that Ukrainian losses are far less than Russian losses. And I have to say that is probably a great untruth. The information that we have based on a variety of sources, and mainly one of those sources is video evidence. And that video evidence shows that indeed the Ukrainians are indeed taking far more greater casualties than they are actually reporting. Obviously, I have possession of this video evidence, probably as you do as well, as with a bit of surface digging into open source information. You can obviously find this information, but there's no way that I can show this information and show this evidence on YouTube. It would break certain agreements. But that is a absolute and resounding fact in terms of the level of casualties, and it shows you just how intense the fighting is. I also wanted to talk about some of the technologies that the Ukrainians are fielding and receiving. And we also obtained evidence that some of these capabilities that are being handed over to the Ukrainians have not been officially announced, such as the German. It's more or less a improvised shaped explosive. Well, it's based off the explosively formed penetrators that we observed in use in Iraq in the Middle East, and it's based off of that design. It is a mine officially, and it is based off both an acoustic and a thermal fuse as well, and the way this system works, and I've posted a picture of this weapon system as the thumbnail to the video, so you can understand that it's not a mine in the traditional sense. It is a directional mine, much like the U.S. Claymore, that is designed to place the front towards the enemy. Then it detonates, sending ball bearings towards an arc towards enemy formations. and it's great for ambushes. This weapon system, the DM-22, is much like that as well. It's not something you bury or you set in a roadway in which a vehicle rolls over. It is directional. It is an explosively formed penetrator, much like a heat warhead, that you point towards a direction of travel you think the enemy forces are going to be approaching from. So you can set it 20, 30 meters off of a roadway, fairly well hidden, and then once a tank or armored vehicle activates the fuse of the DM-22, it then automatically explodes, firing that molten jet of that explosively formed penetrator into said vehicle. And the Germans have obviously not announced that they have given these systems to Ukraine, but they are being delivered and they are being actively used in the ongoing war. Furthermore, the Ukrainians have the industrial capacity to make these sort of systems, to produce these sorts of systems, these explosively formed penetrators, both very well-made systems based off the DM-22, and also improvised systems as well, based on some other systems that the Ukrainians can cobble together, much like the Iraqis did during the U.S. occupation of Iraq. But again, this just gives you another example of the level of external investment that other nation states are into this conflict in terms of giving the Ukrainian military these sorts of systems, which are indeed having an effect on Russian forces. And that's probably why we continue to see the Russians prepare the battlefield, and they have right now are kind of reassessing some of the maneuver operations that they may actually want to do. And I do believe part of that is one, in part of the issue because of the roadways, the Russians still having to operate on major and minor roadways and not conduct overland operations because of the high water table. We continue to see Russian armored vehicles getting stuck, and at the same time, if the Russians do maneuver along these roadways, we are seeing systems like the Javelin, the In-Law, and this new system that we are now aware is operating in the Ukraine, the DM-22, which is simply a remote anti-tank mine that is directional, and it can hit targets anywhere from 3 to 5 meters all the way to up to 100 meters off a roadway. And we understand that one of the tactics of the Ukrainian military is these keyhole shots, where you have these hedgerows in the road areas, and what the Ukrainians do is they end up setting these explosively formed penetrator devices off the roadways in fields in which the Russian vehicle then moves along. And this would be an example here. And once that vehicle crosses the path where that the DM-22 is, the DM-22 then detects that Russian vehicle and then fires its explosively formed penetrator into the vehicle, much like we would see the Iraqi insurgents utilizing those explosively formed penetrators, where they were using cell phones and other rudimentary devices to set off those munitions. In this case, because of the advances in technology, the Ukrainians don't have to manually set this weapon system off. They simply plant it in a field and they activate it, and once it senses said armored vehicle, the acoustic signature or the thermal signature of a Russian vehicle, it then detonates and then kills said Russian vehicle. So interesting bit of information in terms of some of these capabilities that the Ukrainians are utilizing. And on the flip side, we are continuing to see Russian forces as well continuing to rain down cruise missiles now on targets on the train and transport infrastructure of Ukraine. Over the last 48 hours, after the Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State had departed Kiev back to Poland, we are now starting to see Russian forces going after some of those train stations and the ability of the Ukrainian transportation industry to use its train network. And quite honestly, I'm surprised that didn't happen earlier. And there's a lot of things to this conflict that I observe and see that that don't make a lot of sense. And it appears to be the war appears to be escalating in more of an incremental way in terms of some of the targets that the Russians are going after. And at the same time, we knew the Ukrainians had the ability to strike targets deep in Russia. And now we're starting to see some Russian oil facilities near the major town of Bryansk being quite possibly targeted by either Ukrainian saboteurs or long-range guided systems that may have struck certain targets, certain oil installations near the city of Bryansk. So we're continuing to see this incremental escalation in this war, and I would assume that as the war continues, we will continue to see this happen. I think quite possibly the next stages of, at least for the Russians, is maybe to go after the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Again, another target that I'm simply very surprised the Russians have not yet gone after, and it's just something that is kind of outside the realm of normal operations, but I would assume that maybe some sort of agreement was made, maybe that the Russians had agreed not to attack certain targets in the Ukraine as long as the Ukrainians, excuse me, would not attack certain targets inside of the Russian Federation. Now, as we start to see the likelihood that the Ukrainians could be targeting targets deeper in the Russian Federation, so those oil facilities near Bryansk and other areas such as Belgorod, and we have actually seen Ukrainian forces at times in some of these low-level battalion-sized offensive operations start to approach the Russian border as well. So the possibility for escalation and continued escalation is very probable. To include, I would say, the outlook and the possibility of Russian strikes very close to the border with Poland and Ukraine, as the Russians look to negate the arms shipments that continue into Ukraine by both Polish, Romanian, the United States, United Kingdom, and a host of other nations. And as we know now, even some clandestine activity by the state of Germany as well, with those DM-22 devices that were sent to Ukraine. But that's all we have for today. We will continue to monitor, report, and bring you, the viewer, more information for your consumption. Have a good day, everybody.